Marvel's What If, Episode 7. What if Thor and Loki were never brothers? Or what if Thor grew up an only child? And my original thought was, so what? Because I don't see the significance of removing Loki from the equation. It's like, okay, so basically this episode starts, ponders the question that nobody asked. So what happens if Thor and Loki never grew up? So we see Odin, he's going off into the Odin sleep, and once he goes off into the Odin sleep, Frida, she ends up going, to go visit like her sister or something like that, and having like a girls' garden party. She tells Thor, she's like, while I'm gone, take care of the kingdom and don't do anything stupid. Thor decides, after his mom leaves, to click up with his buddies, click up with his friends, and go to Midgard, go to Earth. And he landed in Las Vegas, and he brought every alien in the galaxy to Las Vegas, and they basically partied their ass off. Now, we did see Jane Foster. Jane Foster and Darcy, they were there because they were tracking the energy signature, and they tracked Thor all the way to Las Vegas. Now, here's the part that confuses me. When you go back and watch the original Thor movie, and I know a lot of you have not seen the original Thor movie in a long time. I actually saw it recently. The question that was presented was, what if Loki and Thor were never brothers? In the first Thor movie, Thor was going through the 9 realms, kicking ass. He was partying. He was, sleeping with random women. He was having a good old time. It was like this big thing. He was basically like a big kid, and it was just all fun and joy and games. He was the exact same way here. He went down to Vegas to basically party his ass off. There was nothing about his character from the first Thor movie and in this particular episode of What If that changed. So when Darcy and when even like her and Jane, when Jane and Darcy showed up, Jane immediately fell in love with them. He fell in love with her. The two of them started talking, and then she basically partied with his ass, and they partied till the night. Like there was a point where, Loki, and they said that instead of Odin taking Loki and raising him on Asgard, he returned Loki to Laufey, and Loki basically grew up with his dad and grew up with the Frost Giants. So the whole question is, again, what happens if Thor and Loki were never brothers? But according to this, they were still friends, and they were still calling themselves brothers, because although Loki grew up with the Frost Giants, because of the kingdom thing, him and Loki were still cool. Like, they were still friends, so he was still in his life. He wasn't in his life in, like, a brotherly way, but more of, like, a best friend way. So I was just like, I don't understand what... this episode was pointless to me. Like, nothing about... Like, the question that was presented, there was nothing about Thor's personality, because this takes place around the first Thor movie. There was nothing about his personality that changed whether Loki was in his life or not. So like I said, so they're doing the party thing. And Nick Fury, apparently, he rolled up on Thor and tried to convince Thor to leave. Thor didn't leave. Fury got hurt in the partying. He got hurt in the conga line or whatever. And then Maria Hill, she takes over. She grabs up Jane Foster, brings her down to S.H.I.E.L.D., down to the helicarrier. And then they're just like, oh, tell us how to stop these aliens. And she's like, I don't know. So then Maria Hill's like, fine, it's time to bring out the big guns. And then she takes the Captain Marvel pager. We've never seen, in the Marvel Cinematic Films, the pager never came up until Thanos showed up. We're up to episode 7 of What If. Captain Marvel has showed up, I think, 3 times now. So now all of a sudden, everybody knows about this pager. And this pager has just been a thing now. And I'm just like, now we just pushing the pager for every little thing. And what bugged me about it was, although aliens did arrive on Earth, they were in Las Vegas partying. They weren't killing people. They weren't hurting people. And besides, it's Las Vegas. There was nothing about what Thor was doing that was causing a threat to humanity, to the point where Maria Hill even had to call Captain Marvel to come down and try to like take care of the situation. He wasn't a threat. Like, he wasn't even hurting anything. And when Captain Marvel showed up, the two of them got into a fight because Captain Marvel, she was told this guy is a menace. So of course, when she shows up, she doesn't ask questions or try to find out the situation. She just comes in and starts swinging. I thought the fight that the two of them had was very mediocre. And Captain Marvel pretty much got her ass beat, throughout the course of the entire fight. And then she goes back to the helicarrier, and then she tells Maria Hill, she's just like, oh, I don't want to give him my full power because I don't want to leave a crater in the middle of Las Vegas. And I'm just like, don't do that. Don't do that. You just get your ass beat. But then Jane, it's like, but the partying was scaring people, and they just wanted him to go home. So Captain Marvel goes in again because what Maria Hill had said, she was just like, oh, if you take him into the middle of the desert and then hit him with your hardest punch, the desert can withstand that blast and human lives won't be at stake. And Maria Hill was on some bullshit because when Captain Marvel convinced Thor to go out there, Maria Hill was going to nuke both Thor and Captain Marvel. And then somebody was like, but why would you send a nuke out there if Captain Marvel's there? They're like, don't worry, she can take it. And I'm like, but do you actually know that? So she was getting ready to fire the missile and kill both of them. Jane ended up creating a device because Jane was just like, wait a minute, Thor, Odin, these are people that I've heard in legend and in storytale. She was like, but if Thor exists, and if there's a Loki, and if there's a Lady Sith in the Warriors 3, there has to be a Frida, there has to be an Odin. So she made a device to reach out to Asgard. I don't know how she made the device, but she made a device that allowed her to reach out to Asgard, and she called Heimdall. He opened the Bifrost, he brought Jane to Asgard. She told Heimdall what Thor was doing, and then Heimdall sent Jane to go talk to Thor's mom. He goes and talked to Thor's mom. She's like, oh, your son is in trouble. And then, Captain Marvel and Thor, they're in like the Arctic or whatever. They're in the middle of the snow fighting. Maria Hill was about to fire the nuke, and just before Maria Hill fired the nuke to kill everybody, then Thor's mom showed up, and she was like, "Oh, son, I'm coming to Midgard." And because Thor lied, he was just like, "Hey, mom," because she was like, "What are you doing on Midgard?" And he was like, "I'm just here studying with my friends." And she was like, "Oh, really?" She's like, "Well, I'm coming down there to see your thesis about your studies on Midgard. I'll be there within the hour." So now Thor's like scrambling, and then as soon as Captain Marvel realized, she was like, "Yeah, that's your mom." And he was just like, "Yes, that's my mother." He's like, "I need help." And she's like, "Well," she said, "my advice to you is start sweeping from the corners and work your way to the door." Because once she saw that his mom was coming, she dipped on him because she was like, "Well, you about to get your ass beat." So then she left, and then Thor went to all the aliens. He was like, "Yo, we got to clean this place up." So they cleaned up the entire Earth. And then by the time his mom showed up, she saw Thor and the aliens in a study group together. And Captain Marvel showed up, and then she went along with the lie. She was like, "Oh, here's the Midgard information, that you wanted on a tablet somewhere." And he was like, "Oh, thank you." And then he called for his hammer, and when he called for his hammer, the hammer had some lady's panties on it. And then that's when the jig was up. But then the mom ended up taking everybody back to Asgard. Thor went to Jane, asked her out on a date, and then, he told him it's like, oh, it's a place with magical unicorns. So the two of them is going to keep doing the same things that they've been doing. And then as Thor was about to walk away, the Watcher decided to open his big mouth, and he was just like, oh, they all lived happily ever after. And then Ultron showed up, like Ultron robot showed up. Ultron showed up, and when Ultron showed up, Vision was inside Ultron, and Ultron had all the Infinity Stones all over his body. So I'm just like, okay, this looks like a promising episode, because once we saw Ultron with the Infinity Stones and with the Vision inside of him, that's how the episode ended. So, and we've lost light. So, I'm not gonna lie, this was not a good episode. This episode was not good. I was not a fan of this episode. It was kind of boring. It was a little silly, it was a little goofy, and it didn't make sense because, like I said, nothing about that episode had anything to do with Loki and Thor being brothers. Thor was the same person he was in the first film, regardless if Loki was there or not. But I now want to see what's going on with this Ultron thing, so so hopefully I can get the taste of this episode out of my mouth, and we can move on to episode 8. But thank you for tuning in. Share your thoughts below. Let me know what you thought about episode 8. Did you enjoy it? Because I sure as hell did not. What did you think about it? I mean, it was typical like Disney Marvel fairy tale BS. But what do you think about next week's episode? With the whole thing with Ultron, with the Infinity Stones, is a story going to be told? Because this is the first What If episode that's actually going to continue. Because every time we have a What If episode, it ends, and then regardless if the ending is concluded or not, we just move on to the next thing. This one's actually going to continue because it started with Ultron, and we're actually going to get the Ultron episode in the next episode. So what do you think about that? Share your thoughts and comments, questions, and or concerns down below. Hit the notification bell so you know when my episode 9 review pops up for Marvel's What If. Like I said, Stargirl, Supergirl, Titans, and Doom Patrol as well. And we're still waiting for the new fall season. Check out the Tacos and Geek podcast that I do with Sean, Justin, and Gotham Geek Girl Nadia. We actually did a special episode because we's back, baby, doing the podcasting. And I'm going to Comic-Con next week, so look out for my video for that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. So until we shed some light on this situation for next week, take care for the God of Thunder. And I'm out this bitch.